This video presentation is made possible by Brewster Services Group.
Workshops ordered. Mr. Garen, will you say the prayer?
That's right. Good Lord, thank you again for allowing us to be here as a board to look after the best interest of the kids of Loudon County. Be with this board and help them to make the best decisions for the kids and the teachers and the staff and the community of Loudon. In your name we pray. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Has everybody looked over the meetings? The minutes of the last 2 weeks ago?
We're having them about every 2 weeks now.
Any comments on? Comments on minutes? Mr. Gary, coach approvals.
We have a volunteer coach for boys basketball at Red a assistant basketball coach at Greenback, and then our assistant baseball coach at North Hill. The principals have recommended these coach approvals.
So the principals did recommend.
Yes, sir.
Any comments? None. Resolution 2020.
TSBA recommended that systems across the state adopt this policy. As with our system, every system in the state is having to submit a continuous learning plan to the State Department for approval. And when you get into some of those plans, you may be in conflict with some existing board policies relative to attendance and different things of that nature. So they recommended, instead of going in and changing every policy, because you may need some of those policies for your in-person students and different policies for your virtual students, or when we work through this process, they recommend to keep our policies in place, but where there's conflict, let your CLP override that. So that's essentially, they've listed out some of the policies they feel could possibly be in conflict with the reopening. And then they just recommend that you approve this so you don't have to go into each policy every time there's a conflict to change that.
This is on an emergency basis.
Yes, and this is only in effect, you'll see in here, it's only in effect while we're operating under the continuous learning plan, CLP.
So will the policies stay in effect until we have a conflict and then we'll change it, or?
The policies stay in effect the whole time, but if there's a conflict between the plan that you approved tonight and a policy on down the road, then the plan would take precedence until we work through this crisis.
Can you give us an example?
For instance, like attendance, we'll be taking virtual attendance. So the attendance is based on the daily check-in and the student completing the work, whereas in school, the attendance is placed on them actually showing up. So that could be a conflict because they can't actually show up. So you would operate under that CLP. They've got some things in there dealing with emergency closings, that triggering or remote learning and things like that from closings. Those would still count as school days, where necessarily in our policy they don't. And then dress code, obviously, with virtual learning, you're still going to have some issues if you Zoom and things, but there still may be some conflict where you don't exactly adhere to board policy. So examples like that, I don't see anything major that would cause us issues, to be honest with you. But since this is a TSBA recommendation, I can foresee in the future what they've apparently foresaw for the whole state to look at that.
Michael,
Yes, sir.
on the emergency closing, so if the kids are doing virtual learning at home and say we have a snow day, they can opt to have a snow day too? Or
That's a good question.
so that's not fair. You get out for snow and you still have
Still have to learn. Craig's joining us here on the phone. The snow shouldn't interrupt the virtual learning. The only piece that would interrupt the virtual learning would be if the teacher couldn't access their equipment to be able to get to the kids. And quite honestly, like if we ran into a blizzard, which I haven't seen one in a while, if we had like a 10, like where we would need to close for 10 days, well really by the third day we could flip remote and we wouldn't have to use those stockpile days or extend calendar years. Everybody could do the remote under this plan. Anytime we flip to remote, those are counted as days present for all of our kids. When the state approves that CLP, then if we operate under that, then it's considered days in. But there wouldn't necessarily be any snow days for the virtual learning kids because they wouldn't be impacted because they got to the last minute. The only issue there would be if a teacher had trouble getting to do another check.
No, I think he's answered my question.
Anybody else? Mr. Gary, the contingency learning plan.
We have got, and before I start this, I want to say we'll formally submit this tomorrow. That's our deadline. If you all choose to approve this tonight or if you have any changes that you need to make. But as I indicated in the last meeting a couple of weeks ago, it made me a little nervous to go ahead and purchase the program, which we won't purchase it till tomorrow if it's approved tonight, to go ahead and purchase a program and line everything out and invest that money, and then the state doesn't give us formal approval till the end of August, so then they come back and say, well, you're not approved, then, we kick back and punt. And so I expressed that uneasiness to the State Department, and I had an assistant commissioner call me Tuesday, and I verbally walked through our plan with them. They were rather impressed and shared it with all the superintendents in the state on Wednesday. And then this morning, another assistant commissioner shared our plan with the State Board of Education because they were talking about CLPs today. So I'm not nervous about it being approved now. We may have to tweak it because we've got to go through the formal process, and there's different sections where they may give feedback, so we may have to make some changes. But that's fairly impressive, in my opinion, for them to present that to the state board to show what some systems are doing and try to meet the requirements of the CLP. But basically, to go through the CLP, we're utilizing the Florida virtual curriculum for the students. That'll be where their content comes from. They'll work through online modules, and then each day, one of our teachers will do a check-in with them, either Zoom, phone, or something, probably Zoom would be the preferred method, to see if they need any support in the work that they're doing through the modules to support their learning. And then they'll assign the modules and then give them feedback and grade any work that needs to be graded to take grades. So, and that's kind of what triggers the attendance mechanism for a virtual student. Are they doing the work they're supposed to be doing, and are they on those scheduled check-ins? So like the teacher will set office hours and say mine is, hey Kim, your office hour is 10 o'clock. Then the kids that you're monitoring have to be there when you Zoom in or call in at 10 o'clock for you to be able to help them, because the teacher's got their other duties during the day too.
So it's that group, not just like, I'm going to talk to Kenny and then I'm going to talk to you. It's those 5 or 6.
Yeah, they can choose to do it individually or as a group, but typically if it's more efficient if you've got a group of third graders, then you can have the whole group at the same time. That's the better way to do it. And then that's that piece. And then if we have to do a full district closure, Then we would flip over to what we call remote learning, and that's where the kids that are in person in class, the teachers will just Zoom out the regular school day to them. The kids that don't have internet will record those Zooms on flash drives and then provide that to the kids so that they get the same material, and then they would just get the daily calls of support to go along with the material that we've already done. So that's the two models. One, the Florida virtual model is for the kids that are intended to go into virtual and stay there the year. And then the other model is if we have to have a closure and the kids that are in school with us can't come to school, then we provide that instruction.
How comfortable do you feel with what the virtual kids are learning and what we're learning in class? How well does the curriculum match up?
The curriculum's pretty well aligned. There's a few spots, like fifth grade social studies, we do more Tennessee stuff than they would do. So our instructional coaches are going to work with the teachers to supplement some Tennessee social studies stuff in fifth grade to account for that. And the teacher of record is monitoring that. So if they see that there's a gap in rigor or something like that, then they would fill that in. The other piece to that, like at the high school level, if we've got an honors class, a kid in an honors class that was wanting to do virtual, then that teacher may supplement a lot more material for that student in the Florida virtual to make sure they're getting the same rigor as the student in person is getting. So those type things, but yeah, having our teachers monitor it, I think is the key for that piece. Then as you can move through, part two is essentially we're doing a traditional and a family choice. This is just a template that they had us go through. Part three is the meat of it, the standards-based instruction. The one piece that the state really liked, and of course I'll need your approval for this, is we're using the Florida virtual for the content and the teacher's records, but like if it's a student that's receiving RTI, response to intervention, then we'd have our RTI teachers Zoom in to provide that intervention in a virtual group like they would in class. And then for kindergarten and first grade students, I want to hire 2 teachers, is my plan. I had 2 positions that I didn't replace this year that I've got already in the budget. So one of those, when I moved the assistant principal from Sticky, I didn't replace that one. And then we had a teacher at Philadelphia that retired, and the numbers haven't shown that I need to replace that one. So I'm going to take those 2 and hire someone to do foundational reading skills with all of our kindergartners and then with all of our first graders. So they'll Zoom out to a group of 6 or 7 kindergartners. That'll be their day-long job. They'll be based in a school, and we'll put them at Loudon Elementary, and they'll work like other teachers, but they may have like in RTI, where an RTI teacher may see 8 or 10 groups a day, every 30 minutes. This teacher will have 8 or 10 groups a day of virtual kindergartners and virtual first graders to provide that foundational reading skill on top of what Florida Virtual is providing. Because we're going to get these kids back at some point, and I want to make sure they're on track where everybody else is on track. And kindergarten and first grade is so important when it comes to foundational reading skills that we don't want to take a chance of those students getting behind. So if you allow me to do that, that's not added to the budget. That's repurposing positions to make that a little bit better. We're also going to utilize our launch program. We'll have normal launch, but we'll have a couple of extra folks in launch that support the virtual students through virtual tutoring. If in addition to what they're getting from their teacher record, if they need additional help, then they have the virtual tutoring. And then our special ed, our special ed director will work with all of our special ed parents and work through the IEPs to make sure that their services are comparable as well. And then there are accommodations and modifications in the Florida virtual program as well. The next part 3.2, shows you we have to show the state our minutes per session for each subject, essentially, which is what you're going to see, and then our delivery mechanism. The synchronous is where if we close school, that's the remote instruction. They call that synchronous because it's live instruction. The asynchronous would be our flash drives, and then the virtual is the virtual school. So, and the teacher-based is obviously when we're in person at the school. The next section, 4.1, is attendance. We went from 6.5 hours, Scotty, to 7 hours a day because the state told us last Wednesday that since we're a district that stockpiles days, our school day is 7 hours a day. So since our traditional school day is 7 hours a day, our virtual school day has to be 7 hours a day. Some of your city systems that never take days may still be 6.5 or 6 3/4, but we were told to be 7 because that's what we are now. And then Section 5 talks about our technology, and I will say Ms. Malone has done a great job, and Jared and what they are extremely overworked right now, trying to get everything ready to get out and get one-to-one. And like I said, if you all approve this tonight, then we'll be purchasing for the virtual tomorrow and a couple other programs that they'll have to get loaded on machines, every machine in the district. So they've got a lot of work ahead of them as well. Section 6 is the professional development that we're doing. We've already started that yesterday and today. Ms. Warren, Ms. Malone, some other folks we brought a few teachers out from every school, lead teachers, and trained them on the Zoom, the Microsoft Teams, Seesaw, some of the programs that we're going to be using so that they can go back to their school the first week of school for in-service and train all the teachers on those programs to make sure they're comfortable to deliver that remote instruction if we have to. The first couple of weeks of school, I'm asking teachers to teach in the classroom like the kids were at home, using the computers, using these programs so that everybody's used to it. So if we do have to trigger a closure, then it's a seamless deal. And then as soon as we get the Florida virtual program purchased, we will set up the professional development with them so that we can get our teachers to utilizing that as well. And then Section 7 is how we're monitoring attendance, basically through the work and through the check-ins. And then Section 8 is how we communicate out, Twitter, Facebook, Skylert, those type of things.
For the virtual, report that to us. Is that how it works?
We can monitor all the progress that the teachers can on the program. So the pieces that aren't in here in this plan that's important for you to know is what I'm intended to do, because we're already asking more of teachers already as far as cleaning, all the safety protocols. They're going to be coming in earlier, staying later because, temperature checks and all these type of things. And I know we didn't give a raise last year, this year, so we've got to have teachers to monitor this. So what I'm asking is I'm going to do a stipend of $100 per subject for the year for K through 6. So that'd be $400 per kid for all 4 subjects for a teacher if they monitor that student. And then in 7th through 12th, it'd be $100 per subject per semester, because the high school, switch semesters. So that'd end up being $200 a kid per year per subject to monitor those to help offset that. Now they can use time during their day, rotation time or planning time or things like that, or they can do it right after. But that is an additional ask. I've repurposed some money in the ESSER grant for that, but you'll see in a budget amendment here in a few minutes that I'm going to ask for another $270,000 to offset that. If I don't get enough volunteers to take that, then we'll just have to assign the kids that we have that we don't have enough volunteers for, we'll assign them across every teacher on the grade level, fairly distributing those. so that it's fair for everybody. But I'm hoping we can get enough volunteers, just teachers wanting to do that.
That will be as a teacher, that will be, if you just assign it, that's going to be a lot. It's going to rub some people the wrong way.
But we've got to
the money is important.
Yeah, we've got to do that. We've got to teach the kids. I'm hoping that will entice volunteers to do that. But if it doesn't, then we have to do that because we still got to make sure the kids are covered.
How much would that be per teacher?
It depends on how many kids they picked up. If I picked up one elementary child and did all 4 subjects with them, that'd be $400. So if I picked up a group of 5, that'd be $2,000 for the year. So it depends. In the middle school, in high school, they're more subject specific, so you're not going to have as many. You may have 20 kids that need English 2, so you may have some teachers who get 10 and 10, so it'd be like $1,000. So it just depends on how many they pick up and how many people are picking them up. So. Go ahead.
Sorry, what is our total virtual number now?
We are a little over 800. That's a good question. We had estimated and budgeted for 300. So I had to do some major budget revisions for the grant. So yeah, with pre-registration, we were about 800. If we had, and we may fluctuate up or down. Principals are calling all the parents this week to make sure they understand, hey, this is what the program is. And some parents didn't realize what they were signing up for, and some did. So, and then some parents missed it, and I've just been telling them to go talk to your principal, and if they've got, I don't want to deny anybody if they feel like that's the better method for their family. So they're just working through the principal. So it may be up or down just a little bit from the pre-registration. So we may have to tweak it again once we get started. But once school starts and we bought those seats and those kids are in it, then we should do pretty solid. So I'll probably have another one in August just to make sure we're square on that.
With that being said, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we were going to ask them to stay at least a semester before we let them come off.
We've got in the plan 9 weeks. Yeah, that's a grading period.
So what if like they start school and then
that's the wrong choice for them?
Yeah.
Like any other thing, what that would happen in school, I would ask them to go talk to their principal, and then they'll see what's best. If the principal didn't think it's best for them to come back, we'll let them come out of the program and come back. If the principal thinks that, what I don't want is somebody flipping from virtual to in-person back to virtual. That's not going to be good for the kids or us. But yeah, we're trying to, it's a partnership with parents. And I may think I want something, and then when I'm 2 weeks in it, I didn't really want that. So
What's for virtual, what think about that when you have?
they're not going to think a thing about it.
They get their money regardless.
Yeah, we've done pay.
We've done pay.
It will cost us money for parents to do that, but, like I said last time, I'd rather have them in person. I think that's going to be better instruction for them. So if they want to come back and they don't think that's a good fit, then we'll have, through conversation with the principal, we'll have that option as long as it's not abused. Yeah, I can go into any more detail you want me to, but that's pretty much the, and if you put that in there, you've got a virtual school application in there, and if you look at the expectations and guidelines, that tells you about everything you need to know if you're, as far as a parent, what we're looking for and the hours and what you're going to be getting
this might be a question for Jennifer. What about our kids that live out of cell phone service? I mean, they don't have the internet. I know that they're if they can't even get a hotspot, then there's no way to get that to them. They either have the homeschool option or in person. But now, if we closed and went remote, then they'd have that flash drive option, but we can't flash drive the for the virtual. Okay, just flashlight only if it's a mandatory close.
Yeah.
Okay, so but like the kids that that can't afford the internet.
We've had a handful that
7.
Yeah, just a handful that, and the principals are working with them, like AT&T. So, some other places, like if you're on free and reduced lunch, they'll work with you. So we're trying to work with them to see if there's a way to
They make those little hot spots.
Yeah, there's that option, but it's like $5 or $10 a month.
$10 a month.
Yeah, if they're on free and reduced through AT&T, if they're in certain areas. So there's different programs, different providers have it, and we work with them to try to make sure they're squared away in that. But, it would worry me a little bit if they're not used to having internet, and then all of a sudden they're expected to spend 7 hours on it every day. You know what I'm saying? So but we're working with the ones that have issues.
Okay. We pay for the virtual school on a per student basis?
Yes, sir. That's about $200 per student for the Florida virtual, which is one of the more economical programs out there that we could have chosen.
Is that for the year?
That's for the full year, yes, sir. But it's by student. So once I buy Gary Evans' seat, if Gary Evans comes back a week later, nobody else can use Gary Evans' seat, and I paid for Gary Evans' seat. So if Gary Evans comes back and then Zach wants to go, I paid for Gary. I can't give Gary's to Zach. I have to pay for Zach's. So that's why I said, it may fluctuate. Right now, when I budgeted, because I had to turn in the ESSER grant to get it approved, when I budgeted the second time, it looked like we were on track to about $750. So I budgeted for $800, and we went just a little over $800. So once we work through, the principals work through it, that'll come down and go up a little more. We'll fix it, but we're close because I budgeted for
We're not going to cut that off until school starts, right?
Right.
So day one.
Yeah, we've got the 27th, I think, on our application because we have to buy the licenses and put the kids in it and get the teachers trained. But if we have extenuating circumstances and we need to shift somebody over, they may be delayed getting on it. But ideally, we put the 27th so we could have everything in place for when the kids needed to start. Because you can't just turn it around like that.
Anything else?
Am I forgetting anything, Mr. Tinker or Ms. Malone?
No, sir, I don't think so. Everything's been covered.
Mr. Gary, Mr. Grant.
I received word from the State Department 2 hours ago that they approved it. So all of the changes we have, basically what I did was I went in and we had budgeted to purchase 520 laptops out of ESSER. I had moved that to the general purpose because the state will give me $200 back for every 3 computers I buy if we use our money. I couldn't do that for the state money. So I could get more computers for the same amount of money. And then I shifted that money over to buy more licenses before the virtual and into the stipends for the teachers. Then we cut back on the number of flash drives we need because we've got plenty to take care of that. We're doing fewer access points into the schools because in our survey there wasn't a lot of interest in that. We're still doing them. We're just doing fewer access points. And then we didn't need the temperature detection devices since we got all the thermometers from the state. So I was able to reallocate that money. And then we reallocated the insurance money. I feel like it's, these are $230 computers. So insurance to cover all of our computers was going to be like $35,000. I'd rather just take a chance, and if I get, some of them torn up, which the parents are going to help us with that.
Self-insured, in other words.
Yeah.
Setting aside some money for that.
Yeah, I'm hedging my bets that not everybody's going to tear up their machine. So we saved some there. So essentially in the ESSER grant, I've got about $140,000 in for stipends, and I've got $154,000 that we need to pay for the Florida virtual licenses. And we can tweak that as we need to later on when we have to shift some stipends back to general purpose to free up some more for licenses if we have a few more to add. But I would recommend approval on that grant. So the state approved it today, so if you all approve it, we should be good to go on that purchase, to make that purchase tomorrow.
141 budget amendments, Mr. Chairman.
Chad?
The only budget amendment on there for 141 is for the virtual school stipends. The total with all the Social Security, Medicare, and retirement is $318,000. So it's the 270 that Mr. Guerin was speaking about earlier. We are pulling that from fund balance. That's where we're taking it from. I did separate that. It's not in a regular 116 line. It is in the cost center for COVID. So I did add that to those expenditures.
We're wanting to track everything that's COVID related, because I know there's a lot of talk at the federal level, giving schools money for reopening, so don't know anything about it, but just in case, we want it separated, so if we can ever get any of this money back on down the road, we've got a clear documentation trail. That's why I didn't want to just mix it in with the teacher salary line item. I wanted it specifically shown that this was because COVID caused us to do this.
And that's it. Thank you.
Questions? Does anybody have anything? Brian, Craig, do you have anything?
We're good here. No, I'm good. Thanks, Chief.
Are they together?
Are they together? Are you guys together?
I do want to say one thing, Jimmy. With the number, with the 800 that we got, that's 18 to 20% of our population. So class sizes are going to be much better. Social distancing is a lot easier. We may have some schools like Eaton in first grade, maybe 14, 15 a class instead of 20, 21. Now I could, and I know some systems that could take and pack those back into 20, 25 a class and free up teachers to do other things, but I'm not doing that. That's why I'm asking you for the money out of fund balance to do the stipends, so I can keep those class sizes low. But I try to be transparent with you. I'm just telling you what I could do that I'm not doing, because you can always tell me what to do if you want me to change that. But I felt like that was appropriate for, I think that's going to be great for the in-person kids to have that type of class size. And then that also allows us an opportunity to move some furniture from some places to other places where we need some more desks and set tables. We'll pull them out of some schools, where we don't have the kids coming. But it's pretty consistent across the district, 18 to 20% for most schools. So on average, the class sizes will be about 20% less, which I think that was all of our goal, with the virtual, is to give parents options. But one of the benefits of that is having more room in the classroom with fewer kids. Makes it better in person.
Do you think the virtual's here to stay after COVID?
Depends on the county commission getting us money to keep it going, because we're about to run out.
I want to say about bringing back up in the next meeting about the mask. I've had a lot of people between teachers and just parents asking if we can at least bring up the idea again of wearing the mask, making it mandatory.
Yeah, I've had several phone calls too, but of course I voted the other way in the last meeting, so people knew I was in favor of the masks. But I know if you look at what's happening, within the state, within the region here, we've had a real spike just in the last couple of weeks since we met last with the COVID-19 infections. And the governor was yesterday or today came out with a statement recommending we don't wear masks. He didn't mandate it, he recommended it. I'd like to see it put back on the agenda for board meeting after a while.
What we had on our safety stick? What we had on like our room filters and
We've got our hand sanitizer. We've got our cleaning stuff. We're still waiting on our sprayers. The air purifiers are still down at county. They're still trying to find them for me, to be honest with you, with the number we need at the price point we need. So they're still county purchasing, still looking into that for me. Do you have any updates on that?
Today we gave the teachers truckloads, literally supplies for the offices and for all of the schools.
in hand sanitizers, gloves, thermometers, spray cleaner, spray bottles, face shields, face masks, gloves.
For all of our nurses,
we have gowns, N95 masks.
Everything except for fillers.
Pretty good. Well, we're still waiting for stands to put our hand sanitizer.
We have our big bottles of hand sanitizers, but
Electrostatic sprayers as well.
the stands and the sprayers are.
We're at the mercy of the vendors, but most of that looks pretty good, minus the air purifiers, which we'll keep the doors open and do as much as we can with that. And that was, we were hoping to be able to do that, and I'm still hoping to be able to do that, but we'll see what they can find. We can only get what's there when it's there.
So when you talk about those foggers, what did you say? Was it going to be one like for grade level out of school? So like third grade would have one?
No, we're doing them like wings. So like at Fort Loudon, sixth grade wing would have one, seventh grade, eighth grade, and then same thing. Is that fair?
And they're good. The spray is good for 3 days, and so it wouldn't need to be done every couple of hours or so. So we would have enough to pass around, and you would ask about the chemical makeup of the spray. So I got the MSDS sheet, and I called the manufacturers and talked to them. And it's not a chlorine base like you had some concerns. In one of the names, it has part of the word like chlorine and ammonium, but Craig might be able to explain this better than me, but the breakdown of that, it's not chlorine. It's just it's got the word, if you were to read it, it kind of looks like that's what it has to be, but there's so many different variations of that. But it's not toxic in any way. It can be drank.
And that's all on top.
It's very safe.
Contractors do it too. So I mean, I feel like we're in a good place. Chad and Tinker and Tony Lowry have done a great job getting that stuff out, and we had a big shipment of jugs come in this week to transport our hand sanitizer from our 55-gallon drums that I've got. So we'll have clean hands.
That chemical, was it a tablet or is it an actual chemical? Just in a liquid form?
I think that comes in a liquid form. We also will have some tablets that will come with that can go in spray bottles. You fill it up with your water, and then you drop the tablet.
The tablet forms are the ones that are what leaves the film on everything.
I'll check with them about that.
And once we get going, if we see issues with something, we can switch on what we're using.
Because it shouldn't leave a residue that can come off because of the electrostatic part of it. It's not your typical fogger or a sprayer that will leave that type of film. So it's the reason it's able to work for 3 days is that it doesn't wipe off on your skin and your clothes and everything.
Anything else? All right, now it's time for recognition of visitors. Anybody that wishes to address the board about any matter on the agenda or not on the agenda. And please be brief. Ma'am?
They got on me last time, so I didn't introduce myself. Lynn Greer, got kids in the county school, live in the county. So we have the cleaning equipment here.
The contractor is set. What we're doing on top of that, we have the chemicals, but we're still waiting on the sprayers. Okay. But we have spray bottles that we can put the tabs in and do ourselves. It just wouldn't have the electrostatic charge with it until we get the sprayers.
So it would wipe off before 3 days.
Until we get the electrostatic charge, yeah.
Okay, and we don't have the air purifiers.
No.
And we don't know when we're going to get the air purifiers. Okay. Before I say anything, I want to say I support what you're doing. I understand what you're doing. But now I'm going to flip over to Lily's mama. Part of the reason that I was comfortable sending her back to school is because of air purifiers and cleaning equipment. And I understand that it's not your fault that it's not here yet, because everybody in the world wants these things. So now I have to decide whether I want to send her to virtual school by the 27th or hang on until the 11th because her last name is White and see if you get all this stuff installed. Well, the part of me that loves Loudon County Schools wants her in a brick and mortar building. She wants to be at Philadelphia. I want her to be at Philadelphia. Philadelphia wants her to be at Philadelphia. But if on the day she goes and they don't have air purifiers and cleaning equipment, if I decide to bow up and don't want her there because it wasn't, what are my options at that point? Do I still have a virtual school option?
Talk to Mr. Pizzo and express your concern, and I'm sure that we could get you enrolled in the work.
Okay, all right. Thank you. And please don't take any of that to mean that I don't think you're working as hard as you can to get it all done. It was just...
I'm frustrated as well.
I'm not frustrated. I just wanted to know. I haven't thought on it long enough to be frustrated. I was just hearing this tonight. I was reading your plan, and do I have it right? You all are planning on sending the computers home with the children that are in the brick and mortar schools daily?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
No. What we're going to do is that will be if the teacher wants to or they're needing it, but we'll make sure that at critical times, if it looks like we're going to have a closure, we'll make sure they all go home.
Okay. All right. Just want to clarify that.
There may be some teachers that want, to send them home. But that's not the plan to do it.
Okay. We're spiking a little bit now. What happens if we spike even harder over the next 2 weeks? We'll have to wait till 2 weeks to find out. Okay.
That's it. We're doing the stagger to make things
right.
Going in. Any other change would be a change to the calendar that the board would have to make if they want to do anything based upon spikes. My only concern is if, numbers go up, numbers are up now, numbers go up again. We delay, what happens if numbers are still going up in a month from when we delayed? I'd like to get the computers in the hands of the kids and the teachers being able to show the kids how to use them so we can start remote instruction if we need to start remote instruction, but if I never get the kids there to show them, I never can start it.
Makes total sense. Thank you. And as far as masks go, Lily's not going to wear a mask at this point, but I did get her a face shield. And for anybody who's got kids, anybody who's wondering, Greenleaf in Lenore City has great face shields for a reasonable price. They've got breathing holes in the top so they don't fog up. Lily wears glasses, which is why she will not wear a mask because she is hale and her glasses are please don't mandate the masks because she will spend her whole time in class breathing out and fogging up her glasses, wiping her glasses off, and the only way I know to stop it is to spit on them like you do a diving mask, and I don't think you're going to talk her into spitting on her glasses.
That too is a board decision.
Right, that just got brought up this evening. I thought it was settled, apparently not, but there are kids younger than Lily that wear masks, and she's a pretty smart cookie. And there might be some that might not be quite as smart and not able to figure out how to do their glasses. So, it would sort of defeat the purpose. And Craig Simon told me that the face shield is actually safer because nothing is penetrating it coming in, nothing's penetrating it going out. So he might have something to say about that during this conversation. Thank y'all. I'm sorry. When's the next meeting? We've got election on the first Thursday.
That's our workshop, scheduled workshop.
Right. So you're going to do it on election night?
That's up to the board.
Okay.
Yes, more on the schedule.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay.
My name is Pat Hunter, and I guess I would like some clarification with regards to the suspension of some of the policies. Can you give me an example, for example, the role of the board in 1.101? What about the budget amendments? Will the board continue to approve the budget amendments, or will it be the executive committee only? How will that work?
The board approves them. We only do executive committee when we have to, if there's something pressing that we need to do before the board meets. As far as specific examples, TSBA didn't provide me with any specific examples. So I don't know what some specific examples are for some of those sections.
Okay.
Just to be honest with you, I'm going off what TSBA sent us and their recommendation. The attendance one was one that comes to my head real easy. I couldn't tell you what one for the board. It may, I know the meetings might go back into, if we were in a true lockdown mode like we were before and having trouble meeting on it, cancel. So
I am very curious. What about the janitorial service that we have currently? Will they be charging additionally for cleaning the...
Mr. Ticker's been working with them. They're moving some night folks to day shift so that they can, so that's the same personnel, so that they can keep the bathrooms cleaner on a more frequent cycle, some of the more common areas. They haven't brought back the final proposal to him yet. They said they may have issues with a couple of schools, so they could potentially ask for more money, but they haven't yet.
Okay, because I know in past discussions, I've heard about a problem with having enough product for the schools.
And this is a company that bought out the company we had, and we've not had kids in school with this company yet. So.
Okay. And explain to me how the transportation will work with the buses transporting children.
It will be a normal route. They'll do the normal routes.
But I'm talking about the number of children on a school bus.
It will be the same number, however many number rides that route. We don't have any additional routes. So, if parents can and want to bring their kids by car, that's perfectly fine. But we'll have masks on the bus if they want to wear masks. We're going to have the windows down in the back, the middle, and the front to create air circulation. We're going to seat them from back to front as well as we can in the morning, so there's not as much going by them. They'll sit one to a seat till they're full, and two to a seat. But when the bus numbers, they'll be 20% less probably because we got 20% virtual, but I can't tell you exactly how many will be on each bus.
Well, that's great when it's warm, but when it's cold, the dynamics of the transportation will also change because it's going to be cold, and there's a limit as to leaving the windows open when it's really, really cold. So I would have a concern about that. The other thing is, with regards to your meetings, I guess it'll be up to the board to decide whether you keep your schedule or change it. But I would like, maybe as an addition, for you to consider recording your workshops as well as your board meetings. The equipment is already installed, and it would be a service to the community. So I'd like for you to consider that. Currently, you only record your board meetings.
It's TV3 that records. It's TV3's equipment, and TV3 does the recording and the streaming. So I have control of that.
I understand that. But if the board requested that, I'm sure that they would agree to it. County Commission has already started recording their workshops.
RedskinRadio will do it, right?
I know, they will, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
But we do have the equipment, and yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
He's a lot quicker getting on.
I know, but we've already paid for the equipment.
Good evening. I just have a question about...
Station 8, please.
Oh, sorry. Amy Wilder. I just have a question about the virtual learning option. I seem to be having a little bit of an issue getting both my children signed up for that.
Having trouble hearing you.
Oh, sorry. I seem to be having a trouble getting my children enrolled on the virtual learning option. I need both of them signed up for that. And I was just wondering, so for all details or anything, I just need to contact the principals or maybe just, I don't know how they're...
Until we purchase the program tomorrow, no one's enrolled in it. That's, the pre-registration was to make sure the principal knew what parents were interested and the parents would contact, and then you'll be invited out to get the device, sign any of the paperwork we need, but all that is taking place at the school level with the principal.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, so until that happens, all we need to fill out is like the online survey and then the application, like the application that's in here. So I got one that wasn't updated. Okay, so that's all that we need to do? Thank you.
Karen Ketchum. Just a quick question because I was confused and it maybe my ADD kicked in, but did masks get put on the agenda for next time? Or did they not? I know it was brought up.
Next meeting, we'll
So it was added to the...
motion for it, and if the board agrees, then it will be.
So I still don't understand all that procedure and stuff. So next meeting, you'll talk about whether or not you'll talk about it?
Right after this meeting, follow.
Someone have to make the motion to put it up.
Okay. Okay, that was all I needed. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Anyone else? Mr. Gary?
Good.
Questions? Comments? We're good. All right, let's call the July 23rd, 2024 meeting to order. All right, on the phone, we have Craig Simon and Ron Brown. We've already had the pledge and the prayer just a few minutes ago. So I'll open it up right now for approval of the agenda.
First of all, I'll make an amendment to I've had many people asking about starting at a later date. I know I talked with Mike about that, and he said that we'd have to extend the first half a little bit. Is that right?
I serve at the pleasure of the board, but we've still got to do the 180, so if you start later, you either need to eliminate some time.
I don't mean start later. I mean start out at a virtual learning instead for 9 weeks.
If we started out, you can start out as a virtual learning if you want to, but it's going to be really difficult for us to get the teachers and the kids to where they're acclimated to the computer and the programs without having them in school for a few days to do that. But I'm not saying it's impossible. It would be, if we had them in school for a couple of weeks to get them acclimated to everything, then that would make that process easier. But I'm not saying it's impossible.
Is there a way that we can work that to where you could do that?
We could stagger them in and do that with teachers, but then we'd still have to adjust the calendar because I'm using 2 inclement weather days to do the stagger to start the beginning of the year. So if we stagger, the state don't really consider that a third of the kids are in. So essentially 3 days is only worth 1 day. So we lost 2 days with that stagger, if that makes sense. So if we stagger them in for say 2 weeks, so many kids at a time to work through that process, we'd have to make up those days or utilize the stockpile days to compensate for it.
Or take away the fall break?
But yeah, we'll do that. It's possible. I'm not saying anything's impossible. Anything's possible.
Well, I'd make a motion or amendment that we do the stagger and then do the 9 weeks virtual and then reevaluate in 9 weeks to see where we're at.
How many days do you want to stagger in and
how many?
How much is that going to cost?
If the first 9 weeks we do go virtual, we'll have to pay.
No discussion, we have a second.
Yeah, you got to have
No discussion, do we have a second? Do I hear a second?
Second.
So if we go virtual for the first 9 weeks, is it virtual from the Florida Academy?
No.
Oh, it'd be
That's 200. It'd be from our teacher.
We'd have to get that approved by the state, wouldn't we?
The remote instructions part of this plan, like if we close to flip it, what we'd have to get approved would be the stagger if we did that, unless we added those days to the county. They won't approve a stagger unless you're showing you're instructing all of your kids during that stagger, which we can't show because we've not had them yet. So we'd have to make those days up till we got the kids in to show that we could do instruction.
How long would it take you to do the instruction?
Well, about another 4 months that he's been working on this plan that we voted on 2 weeks ago. You were sitting right here and didn't say a word about this. Why are we derailing now or trying to derail?
I'm just asking.
This is crazy. Why? I mean, they've worked and got all these things in here and plans. And they've had that for months. I mean, and then now we're going to come in here when we're about to. That's crazy. Where were you at last month with all this?
How many days, Jennifer, do you think a teacher to train the kids on the computer, on the programs to get them?
I'm sorry, Mr. Aaron, that's just hard to say. At least probably 3 to 5.
So we probably have to stagger a month. You need to come up with a month somewhere else.
And is it anything that would be feasible?
It would be challenging at this point for not just the kids, the teachers.
Well, then in that case,
I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it'd be challenging. And there's no good solution to any of this, let me say. But
that's the state approval.
Well, you won't find out if the state approves it till Labor Day, so.
Yeah.
He said that he would rescind his motion.
I'd like to amend it and add that we discussed the wearing of masks.
So you're on a new motion.
Yes, that we discussed the wearing of masks by students.
I'll second that. Motion and a second.
What was the motion on the floor, I'm sorry?
Wearing of masks.
Well,
To put it on the agenda.
yes, to put it on the agenda.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
To add that to the agenda for discussion, or we can discuss it right now?
To add it to the agenda. Kelly, will you roll call that?
Mr. Newman?
No.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Moffitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bridges?
Yes.
Mr. Riding?
No.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Cusick?
Yes.
Mr. Simon?
So now approval of the agenda. Let's add it at next, above the consent agenda. Get it out of the way.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second. With the amendment.
What did it mean? All in favor say yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Brian? Oh,
Yes.
Okay.
I said yes.
Okay.
Fred?
Yeah.
Here, a motion for the consent agenda.
Recognition of visitors.
Oh, it is, isn't it? Recognition of visitors. Anybody wishing to speak about anything that's on the agenda? Station 8, please.
Jacob Collier. I am here today out of respect for my mother, Jennifer Brewster. She is a senior economics and government teacher at Loudon High School. She's currently the only teacher at the high school who teaches government economics. She has shared with me her concern about not offering a mask mandate for her students as well as herself and our family. Seniors are older. They're a lot more susceptible to this virus versus very young children. She had shared with me that she has 33 desks in her classroom. In her first block class, she has 32 children registered. She has shared pictures with me and other teachers about the spacing and her concerns, many of the other teachers also expressing their concerns. And you have a lot of specialized teachers who teach us one specific class who a lot of kids have to take as a requirement. So I just wanted to speak today and out of respect for my mom and her students families that we highly consider this. Thank you.
Jake, you wouldn't call your mother a senior, was you? You wouldn't call your mother a senior, was you?
No, I said she teaches seniors.
Oh, I thought, okay, you say she's my age, buddy. I thought we were tied, man.
Anyone else? Ms. Hunter?
I wasn't going to talk about this, but since you did bring up the subject of masks, I hope that if you do consider masks, that you do consider the shield as well, because it is hard to breathe in a mask, and at least with the shield, I know my doctor said I would have more protection with the shield. So I hope that that's an option too. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. We run along to the consent agenda.
Mask first. Mask, then the consent agenda.
Yeah, mask. Okay, let's go to the mask. I've got where I put it.
Well, I, like Will, have had lots of people contact me in reference to the mask. A lot of those are teachers, and as you know, I'm a teacher, and I'm getting ready to go back to school too. So I do understand, I guess, their fear. So that being said, I contacted a pediatrician because I do not have the answers, nor do I claim to have them, but I think it's best that we speak to someone who does have more knowledge in reference to masks when it comes to kids, since that's what we're in the business of. So anyway, after that discussion, and it was lengthy, I would say probably 30 or 40 minutes of, what is best for kids and teachers, not just kids, but teachers, because if they go down, you don't have school. If they are not in the classroom, then you don't have school, period, because they have to be able to teach. So with that being said, I asked, because I teach in elementary, what are the risks with elementary kids? Tell me the data. I want to know from someone who does it every day. And basically, what the pediatrician told me was that there's not a lot of data that states that little kids transfer it to adults. So, I don't know. All I can tell you is what was told to me. Then I asked about middle school kids. I've taught middle school, and they take up a lot of space in the classroom. I understand that. But I also know that they are still, most of them, not teenagers. So they're still, in my eyes, I guess, younger kids when I think about middle school kids. If they were teenagers, I think I would look at it a little differently. But a lot of them aren't. They become teenagers usually in the 8th grade, toward the end of 8th grade most of the time. So I asked in reference to how about middle school kids? And I was told that's kind of up in the air because there's not any data there either that supports that. So, I wrote that down. And then I asked about high school kids. Now I want you to think about high school kids because they're older. They're not, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11. They're older kids. Those are considered young adults. And those kids maybe do, and they congregate, just, they get together. They like to be together. They like to be close together. And with that being said, I said, well, what do you think about those masks when it comes to them? And I was told by a pediatrician, probably should wear the mask with those high school kids. Are they going to like that? No, I don't think so. But at the same time, I want to protect them. And and I want to protect the teachers. I did ask, if a high school kid gets it, what do you think that looks like? Because I don't know, and I was told that, it could be something not real severe, look like a cold, but then again, it could be. I guess it depends on what their immune system is like and what their condition is health-wise. So with that being said, and the information that I gained, I think that probably high school kids, we should consider about adding that they have to be required to wear a mask.
So you're saying just the high school kids?
I'm saying just the high school kids based on what I gathered today.
Is that your motion?
Well, if anybody else wants to talk, I'll let them have something to say. But if they've got something to say, they're welcome to say it. But I'm just telling you what I gathered. Maybe someone else has something different. Well, then that's in the form of a motion that high school kids be required to wear a mask and their teachers.
Well, let's have some discussion on the whole thing before we come to that, if we can.
Do I hear a second? Do I hear a second?
I'd second, sure. I would add certainly middle school kids to that, if not elementary. I'd do it for the whole thing, really, to be honest. There's no doubt about that. One of the things that I've been reading about the younger children, they may carry it, they may not get sick from it, but they can pass it on to someone else. And so that's what we don't know. Even if they're not a sick child at all, if they can pass it on to middle school age or adult children or their teachers, we still have a serious problem. So I would add it, and particularly with the spike we're getting now in East Tennessee right now, even from 2 weeks ago when we met, the numbers are going up dramatically, and I really think we need to do it for our student population. We're one of the few school systems in the area that's not doing that at the current time. I'm obviously not a very good mask wearer. If you look at most of the school districts in the area, they've joined the mask situation. And I would recommend that we do that. All grades.
3 times in your short little speech right there, you had to pull your mask up.
I did, yes.
So, and what, I'm not an expert at all, but I know what cross-contamination is. Everything you touched on that desk, and you touched your nose and all that stuff, you've cross-contaminated if anybody's touched this, you've cross-contaminated your mask. So, can you imagine if we got a kid, I got a 7-year-old grandson. I want to protect them as much as I can. I think that Mike and his crew has done an excellent job of putting together a plan to give people the option. And I think that's what, as parents, we want the option, okay? We want the option to be able to say, okay, I'm going to send my kid or I'm not going to send my kid. I think Kim's point is pretty valid. I think that's a good point. I think that we could expect kids, older kids, to wear a mask the way they do it all day. Not going to like it. They're not going to like it one bit. But there again, there's going to be the contamination. I can just imagine what some of these kids would do to each other with their mask and do to their mask, and then, we'll have other issues.
I had to wear this all the time. I go to the shield.
Well, and see, that's another good point. But I think what we're, and I got some phone calls. I got an email from one of our teachers that was for the mask. I think Miss Ketchum is for the masks, and she's my favorite middle school teacher ever. So, so it's hard for me to go against anything Miss Ketchum said. So, and then I got a phone call, and then I got another email that were against the mask. And one of the teachers, I think she was a North Middle teacher, she said, she was concerned that if she had her mask over, some of her kids, with some the best plan in this situation, because tomorrow they may come in here and say, hey, listen, y'all need to start school to whatever. Everything's a change, and it's going to keep peaking, and it's going to keep going up and down. And we're at such unforeseen times. I just think that we need to stick with the plan that we got.
And plus, he's wanting in elementary. If we mandate masks for all the students, that means all the football players are going to have to wear them during football games and everything else because they're our students. Cheerleaders, everybody, because they released football today. Or was it yesterday?
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
So there's a lot of guidelines.
Yeah. try to play the mask?
Not if you mandated masks, just inside the school building. Your football player wouldn't have to wear a mask.
Okay, why would you just do that just inside the building if we're going to mandate masks? The parents that's going to send their kids to school decided, okay, we know that they don't have to wear a mask. The ones that won't wear a mask are going virtual.
And how do you enforce it? What do you do if a kid decides he don't want to wear a mask? Or a teacher? How do you enforce it?
It's a difficult situation we're in, gang. We're rolling the dice here. The bottom line is we can't enforce this thing. I highly suggest it, like I said last time, but Mr. Aaron, we've done the best job that we can with this. Like we said, the state may come and mandate it tomorrow, who knows? But I would highly suggest it. We should support wearing a mask at all our schools, but we should stop doing it.
And let me say, I appreciate your comments, Scott. This is the board's plan. This is not my plan. And you have full liberty to adjust or unadjust anything that's on there. We just presented to you what we thought was, at that time, a good plan, and that's for you all to decide. So the continuous learning plan, I think, is a great plan. The reopening plan, I think, was a good plan, but I think it's how you want to make it. It's your plan, not my plan.
What does the plan currently say about masks? Does it say encourage, or does it not say anything at all? I don't remember at this point.
The current plan says that staff, so face coverings are recommended when they can be worn appropriately without touching and with good hand hygiene for students and staff, but not required. So recommended when they can be done appropriately, but not required.
If not a face mask, can they at least wear a shield?
And in the plan, it says face covering. It doesn't specify between a mask and a shield.
Because if you can't understand them with the mask on, then at least they can see what they're saying through the shield and possibly be able to hear them better through the shield.
I think that the distance is an important thing with that also. If a teacher's standing in front of the classroom 6-7 feet away from the children, I don't think she has to have her mask on if she's trying to communicate with that group. But if she's right next to a child, instructing that particular child, then I think that mask is very important. So I think that needs to be assumed or built in some way or other that, the mask should be worn inappropriate or some such thing.
I know I think a few systems have said when social distancing cannot be achieved. And whatever you do here tonight, I don't know, but whatever you do, we'll just need clear direction because it can stay as is, or you can say, we're requiring it for staff, we're requiring it for staff and high school students, we're requiring it for everybody. Whatever you do, we'll just need some clear direction on however you do or whatever you do. If you make any changes, we'll just need clear direction on what you want, like what you're saying. If do you want it in common areas? Do you want it in classrooms? Do you want it everywhere? Do you want it when you're within 6 feet or outside 6 feet?
It gets huge.
Yeah, it is. Go down.
Is there anybody else?
Mike, you said at last meeting, you say you were going to supply all the teachers with the masks, with the shields?
We have face shields that we sent out for every teacher today, and then the health department has given us boxes and boxes of masks that we're going to put on the buses and then the schools for folks at home.
We have to vote on the motion before his amendments and then the amendments. Are you amending it to count everybody?
I'm confused myself at this particular point, especially where we are. The original motion was high school only. I added
Was the high school kids and teachers or just high school kids?
I just said high school. The information that I got was only for high school.
But is it teachers and kids or kids?
Teachers and kids.
So teachers across the board or just high school teachers?
High school teachers.
Okay, high school teachers and high school kids was what your motion was.
And I think just like it was stated, common sense is going to come into play. If you're sitting, 3 to 6 feet away, I don't think that I need that mask on. I think you gotta think about that, because if we're going out to a restaurant and we get in line to go in and they've got these, you can't go in where they don't have X's on the floor, saying that this is enough space. So like Mr. Evans said, if you are standing in front of that class and those kids are, 8 feet away, I don't think that mask is needed. I think that's just, common sense to say, while I'm teaching the lesson, I can take that off. But now I'm going to go over and instruct, feel, and I need to put it back on. I don't
There's a lot of difference in common sense in that piece of paper.
Well, there is, but
we can say that they need to wear them all the time.
I think that they need to wear them, because that's what has been brought to me.
So we have to vote on her motion first, then add the amendments, correct?
And just like Scott said, cross-contamination, if every time you're not close to the kids, you're taking it off with a dirty hand, and then you put it back on, you're putting the front of the mask that just touches your dirty hand next to the kids.
Well, I understand that, but I want you to remember, I sit on this board as a representative of the people that put me here. So when they call me and say, or they send me emails that say, hey, Kim, this is what I want you to do. I mean, like I said, I'm going to work too, and I'm going to go with kids, but you're trying to shoot the message. That when those people contact me that are in that position, that stand in front of those kids every day, I'm not that high school teacher. I don't stand there, I don't teach high school kids, but they do. And I think that when they are concerned, that means that I should be concerned. If that's what they want, then I'm going to do my best to put what they want on the table. Whether we vote it up or down, that is our choice. But I think they do need a voice. And I don't care to bring what they want to you and share it with you. And if you vote yes or no, that's your choice.
Can I ask which pediatrician you talked to?
I'm not going to share that because I promised it would be confidential.
Because it's usually, there's a couple different pediatricians in this county. One's all for them, the other one that's in the same office, it's not necessarily for it. So,
like I said, I did go through each gamut of the kids because that's how we're divided up.
But I think what you done was great. I appreciate that.
And going back to what Scott said, I will say I had a meeting again this week with the health department and Dr. Guider, who is our medical director, and he does strongly encourage, which I think probably when you're referencing these.
I'll second Gary's amendment.
Okay, so we have to have a second. Are we done? So the motion reads what? K through 12. Right? Is that going to encompass everything on campus? Is that ball games? Is that everything?
In the building.
In the building.
Why not ball games?
TSSAA is mandated to wear a mask.
The what?
TSSAA is mandated you will wear a mask if you're going to the ball game. The stand.
The motion on the floor is mask for K through 12, only in buildings.
In the buildings.
Can I ask one clarifying question? Just for operational sake. We operate pre-K through 12, so are you accepting pre-K kids? Just so I'm clear.
Add pre-K to it.
So you're saying pre-K through 12 inside the buildings?
Kim made her own motion.
That should be a parent's decision.
Okay.
We need to make that clear when we vote on it.
So right now we are voting on the amendments of her own, and that's pre-K through 12 inside the building. Okay, let's just add that to her motion.
Teachers and kids. Can you say it, Kayla, one time just to make sure everybody's clear?
To mandate wearing masks, pre-K through 12, teachers and students inside the building.
Okay, that's just to amend the motion. Can you roll call that? This is for just adding it to her motion. This is the amendments to the motion.
Yes. This is not the vote, this is just to add it to the amendment?
Yes.
Mr. Moffitt?
They don't vote on it today.
Ms. Bridges?
Pre-K through 12. No.
Mr. Roddy?
No.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Cusick?
No.
Mr. Simon?
Yes.
Mr. Newman?
No.
So that would make the amendment fail, and we'd have to go back to our original motion, correct? Your original motion was high school only, correct?
Yes.
Inside the building.
Inside the building.
Mandate masks for inside the building for high school kids and teachers.
When social distancing.
And social distancing is not possible.
So let me ask you a question on that, because, I mean, you got to bring back, if you're going to mandate for high school students, you got to bring back school, which has pre-K through 12. We're going to have just certain students in that building wearing masks and no one else.
I agree.
Okay.
So she has added when social distancing is not possible. Yes, please read it.
Mandate masks for high school kids and teachers when social distancing is not possible inside the building.
No, that's all damn thing.
Is there a second on that?
Yes, Dr. Evan.
Okay, so now we just took our teachers, who are now going to have to enforce kids wearing masks and determine if it's social distancing or not. So now we're taking away from educational. We're going to have enough things against us right now. We're just adding to the burden on the teachers. Either say all the time or not. Not just when it's convenient for social distancing.
As read.
For high school kids and teachers to wear masks in the building when social distancing is not present or possible.
Roll call it, please.
Mr. Moffitt?
Although I think it's every person's own right to choose what they want to do, I'm going to let go. I think you make your own choice.
Ms. Bridges?
I kind of agree with Mr. Moffitt, but I'm going to vote yes.
Mr. Ridings?
No.
Mr. Evan?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
No.
Mr. Cusick?
No.
Mr. Simon?
No.
Mr. Newman?
No.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
All right. Wasted a lot of time there. Consent agenda. Your motion.
I make a motion.
Second. I said, do I hear a second? All right. All in favor, say yes.
Yes. Yes.
Resolution 2020. Mr. Guerin.
Recommend approval of the resolution that the SBA has proposed to us.
Your motion.
I make a motion. Second.
A motion and a second. Roll call that, please.
Ms. Bridges?
Yes.
Mr. Ridings?
Yes.
Mr. Evan?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Cusick?
Yes.
Mr. Simon?
Aye.
Mr. Newman?
Yes.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Moffitt?
Yes.
Continuous learning plan.
I recommend the approval of the continuous learning plan that I presented in the workshop. I feel like it's a good model that the state has given us. And I want to also point out that I know there are expenses associated with it, but those would hopefully be non-recurring expenses because hopefully we just have to do that this year.
So moved.
Any discussion? Since there's money involved, will you roll call that, please?
Mr. Ridings?
Yes.
Mr. Evan?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Cusick?
Yes.
Mr. Simon?
Yes.
Mr. Newman?
Yes.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Moffitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bridges?
Yes.
Answer grant.
I recommend approval by the ESSER grant. The state approved our changes today to be able to purchase the Florida virtual program and offset the stipend cost for teachers.
Your motion.
Go.
Second.
Have a first and a second. Will you roll call that, please?
Mr. Evan?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Cusick?
Yes.
Mr. Simon?
Yes.
Mr. Newman?
Yes.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Moffitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bridges?
Yes.
Mr. Riding?
141 budget amendments as we had presented them. Mr. Gary.
Again, that's the additional stipends for the teachers. I would recommend approving that. And then also, I do, well, go ahead. I'll do my director's report.
Okay.
Make a motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. How much money is involved in this?
318 with, that's based on current enrollment, so that could, I'll bring the amendment back to you. I'm just letting you know it could go up or down, whether we have kids come in or out. But that's the best estimate I have based upon the numbers we have at this time.
Okay, will you roll call, please?
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Cusick?
Yes.
Mr. Simon?
Yes.
Mr. Newman?
Yes.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Moffitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bridges?
Yes.
Mr. Riding?
Yes.
Mr. Evan?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Gary, director's report.
Just to let you know, I sent I talked with our Representative Russell yesterday. I have said in the past, and Kim is very well aware of this, that I had applied for a waiver for the Tom Cronin PE Act, where we've got to do 2 30-minute sessions with a certified PE teacher every week, which we're doing that now, just not with the certified PE teacher. So that would cause us to incur some additional costs in staffing. The State Board of Education is supposed to vote on those waivers tomorrow. The State Department of Education has recommended approval of the waivers relative to that, but I think there are some state legislatures that are advocating for that not to be approved. So I reached out to Mr. Russell to let him know that our system lost $245,000 a few weeks ago because the governor pulled back the 2% raise. If you remember the last meeting, we had to absorb that in fund balance, and that we're having additional costs associated with remote learning because of the COVID, and expressed our costs there coming out of fund balance, and that if I had to take on additional costs, essentially this would be our contingency teachers, 1 or 2 of them, to pull in the PE teachers, that I felt like that was unnecessarily cumbersome on our system. So we will find, all that to say, I'll find out tomorrow if I have to hire another PE teacher or not, but I will keep you informed as we move forward. But if I do, I mean, it's because it's state law, because I have to, but just so you're aware, that may be it'd be a contingency, and I will say too that when I talked to Miss Anderson at Loudon Elementary, even though we're going remote, she's still growing. If you remember last year, we had to add 2 teachers there, and her kindergarten is growing again, she said. So there's the potential down there for 1 more as well. Just for full disclosures, you know what I'm doing. But I'll let you know tomorrow when I find out whether or not that there were some other waivers that we requested as well that we should find out on tomorrow as well. 187,372 meals was our total count for summer feeding. 187,372. So I want to thank Allison May and her staff and all the bus drivers and all the volunteers that made that work. I will say that a lot of the waivers are going away that allowed us to do that. So depending on what comes back, if we have a remote closure, I'm not sure what food distribution will look like depending on what the state allows us to do. But we'll do the best we can given the parameters we have to work with. As Scotty said earlier, TWSAA released some guidelines late last night. We're starting to review those, so probably at the August workshop, we'll try to bring you a proposal on, because they've required some things, like masks, temperature check for everybody that goes into the stadium, referees, students, volunteers, whoever,
discouraging.
Anybody that can discourage him.
Did they ask or say how many you want to allow in the stadium? You have to stay 6 feet apart?
This is where I was getting ready to say, those were requirements, and then they've got recommendations, like everybody has recommendations on seating capacity, concession area, and things like that. So we'll get with athletic directors and bring you back what they think, and then you all can tell us what to do with athletics next, since you've had such I'll keep bringing it to you, so you'll be able to help us with that next time. So that Mr. Tinker's going to get the athletic directors next week and see what we can do there. And all that's contingent upon the executive order being lifted on August 29th or 30th, whenever that's lifted. But we are getting some guidelines from them. So I want to remind everybody, August 1st, graduation at Loudon Amphitheater with Loudon High School at 9 o'clock and bring back at 2. I'm hoping we get just a pretty cold spell for one day. I don't know if it's going to happen or not. But, then we'll be able to close out last year and then start into this year. And like I said before, anything other than the stagger, if we have to do anything, I'll keep in communication with you about the start of school. But right now, I think we're good to go for August the 7th, unless the board directs me otherwise between now and then.
Anybody have anything else?
What times do you say the graduation was?
Loudon High School is at 9. I thought it was 10. Okay, 10 and 2. You're right, 10 and 2. I thought it should have been 9, but it's 10. You're correct. I apologize. 10 o'clock to Loudon High School and 2 o'clock for Red Rock. I wanted it to be 9, but I always get what I want.
I think it should be 9.
2 o'clock will be off. 2 o'clock will be off.
I was just going to give an update on athletics. We met a little bit today, and volleyball will now be allowed across the county to have practices of more than 10 because they're considered a non-contact sport. And football will remain doing what they have been doing until the order is lifted or until August the 29th. So they still will not be doing contact or anything like that at this time. Golf and cross country can continue to practice and play in their games and matches. When volleyball schedule begins to play, their game schedule is upon them. They can play in those, but they can't have any scrimmages or anything until that time. Just so you're aware, there may be some things going on in the building, some games, but football and other contact sports will be limited to what they've been doing at this time.
Anything else? Hear a motion second.
Wait, I have a question. You all didn't talk about the workshop date happening on the election night.
Right on the agenda.
He said you all would discuss it.
I said if it gets changed, they will change it. I don't set the date. That was the scheduled date. So
okay. Well,
the executive committee can talk to Bobby and Jerry. I wouldn't change it. I would be for changing.
Well, give me some direction.
I mean, because we're going to have to come down here because they'll have that up there.
So the workshop same day, so 6 o'clock, whatever, as the board meeting.
What I will do, if it's okay with the board, let's see how things go over the next week or so, and then we'll set a date, because our actual meeting's after school starts, so if we happen to need a meeting before school starts, then we can set one in. Okay. And then we'll obviously publicize that out.
Motion, go ahead, second. Adjourn.
Quit looking